all aboard for your chance to win $1,000 every week until December 28th. That's right, $1,000 cash just in time for the holidays. To hop on board, just head to churchillmortgage.com and punch your ticket to the Churchill Express giveaway. Visit churchillmortgage.com for your chance to win big.
This is a paid advertisement. NMLS ID 1591. NMLSConsumerAccess.org. Equal housing lender. 1749 Mallory Lane, Suite 100, Brentwood, Tennessee 37027.
New on Curiosity Stream. We've walked with dinosaurs. We've explored our prehistoric planet. And we were always told the same story. Extinction came from the sky. But what if dinosaurs survived? Amazing Dino World 2. Watch it now on Curiosity Stream. With monthly, annual, and bundle plans, find the one that works for you at curiositystream.com.
Welcome, friends, it's the MovieFilm Podcast. MovieFilm Podcast, enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian are talking about movies. MovieFilm Podcast on the radio. Welcome to MovieFilm. It is episode 273. I'm Zachy Hassan, and I'm here with Brian Hall.
Hey, how's it going, Zachy?
Dude, can you believe we are like halfway through the summer now?
No.
More than halfway through?
I feel like I just was sad about taking down my Christmas tree. So I can't believe how the year's flying by.
The solution is just don't take it down, ever.
Why not, right? If it makes you happy.
Yeah, that's right.
Sheryl Crow was onto that early.
Who can argue with Ms. Crow?
I would never.
Not I. But how have you been?
Been good. Yeah, it's just kind of having that feeling you're having, with being like, wow, okay, so summer is halfway through, and just already thinking about weddings and things coming up that are like fall events that felt like they were far away, but now they're approaching, and you're like, oh, I need to actually think about that. So
it's a metaphor for life.
Yeah. Is it?
I think most things you can sound wise if you say it's a metaphor for life.
Yeah, right.
Or it's a metaphor for Christ, one or the other.
That's right, exactly. Well, in high school, that's correct. That's correct, Brian. You raise your hand when you're whatever book you're reading.
You lean forward. You take your glasses off.
Yeah.
But
reading James and the Giant Peach or Fantastic Mr. Fox or something, and you're like, well, I think this is a Christ metaphor. And then teacher's like, wow, that's how astute, Brian. I didn't even see that.
Well, how so? And you're like, well,
yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of Christ metaphors, talk to me about the series Platonic.
Well, I'd mentioned last episode that I'd started the show Platonic, which is Seth Rogen, Rose Byrne on Apple TV Plus. And I was just going to mention it because I was watching it very casually. I was, before bed, it's 30 minutes. It was very easy to digest. And so I'd watch like 2 or something. And then I found myself like enjoying it and like, yeah, I want to see the next one. But then by the end, I was realizing like, oh, I'm going to be sad when this is over. And I just wrapped it up the other night, and I just wanted to give a full recommendation for it. I think, if Seth Rogen isn't your bag, this is not going to be for you for sure. But I enjoyed it because the show is it's like a hang, like you're just sort of hanging out with these people. And I had already mentioned it, but the basic conceit is it's, Rose Byrne is this mother and has a family, and like that's her mode, that's her life right now. And then her friend from college, Seth Rogen, gets divorced, and he has this very sort of single lifestyle now. And so they reconnect, and she starts to adapt to his lifestyle a little bit, like remembering what it was like to have fun like that and not have to worry about getting to bed, on time, or get up in time to help your kids. And so it starts to pervade her life a little bit, much to her husband's dismay in some respects. And it becomes this kind of interesting examination about growing up and like sort of striking that balance. And maybe like even just like for us, just being like a little bit older, like it sort of taps into that idea of like wanting to revisit a freedom that maybe you didn't even fully appreciate when you were younger. Like you were existing in it, but not appreciating it. And so then when you get older and you get little tastes of it, you're like, oh, that was fun. Remember that kind of feeling. And, but it also like goes into, just how life inevitably transitions, and for you, but also for the people around you and how that affects you. And there's joy in that, but there's also something that's sort of bittersweet as things have to change in ways that maybe you don't really want, and they're not even bad. They're just changes, and it's like another chapter begins, and there's sort of a wistfulness to that. And I just thought through this, sort of body comedy, there was also this sort of thoughtfulness that I related to and appreciated, and in some ways it sort of reminded me of like a little bit more of an accessible Lost in Translation,
Wow.
where like very different in tone, of course, but it captured vibes in a way where it's like, oh, I know that feeling. I've just never thought to put that feeling into words. And just sort of those indescribable feelings you get from, nights where you're hanging out with people and then all of a sudden it's 6 a.m., and you're like, oh, I wish this would never end. And when you're in your 20s, maybe it doesn't have to for a while. But then when you get older, it's, those are fleeting, and, it's just the way it is. But you still sort of want to connect with your friends in those ways, but you also have to face, what's in front of you now. And so I when it was all over, I was just filled with all these emotions.
Wow.
And
I got to be honest, Brian, you're making me want to step outside and just sit and stare contemplatively into the distance.
Well, and what I like about it though is it doesn't make it good or bad. It's just sort of this, that's just kind of how it goes. And it's nice that things change, but it's also like, you're going to miss some of this stuff. Sort of like don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened a little bit is kind of what the show is. Wow. And I ended smiling, and when it ended, I was like, I really enjoyed that. Like that was a good show. So I just felt since it ended on such a satisfying note for me, I thought it was worth bringing up again and saying that again, if Seth Rogen's not your bag, it's probably going to be difficult for some people to to spend time with, but. Yeah, I recommend it. Platonic.
Nice.
Yeah. And then one other show I'd been dying to get to, and I finally had a little bit more time I could actually start, was The Bear on Hulu. And so I'd watched season 1 of this. This was like one of those like sort of surprise buzzy shows about a year ago, right?
This is the show about the big burly gay man.
Yes, The Bear. Exactly. No, this is about, you would actually kind of enjoy it for this aspect alone, but it takes place in Chicago. And the whole season 1 is basically about this chef who works in New York, and he's like a Michelin star chef, or, works at like a high end restaurant. He inherits a family owned restaurant, and his brother has passed away. And so he doesn't want to just get rid of it, and he wants to sort of honor his brother's memory, so he decides to go work there. But the people who work there, some people are into it, some people it's just a job, so it's kind of a sloppily run place, but it makes good food. And so he's like, well, maybe I can apply what I've learned in the order that I've that worked in these higher end restaurants. Maybe I can apply that here and try to get this place in shape. And there's naturally some resistance to that from some people, and it season 1, I think I had mentioned the first time, is basically like uncut gems in a restaurant. Like it's really stressful. And I remember at one point, everybody is just so at each other's throats the whole time that it was like stressing me out. Like I would pause it. And there's one episode that is so harrowing that I think I did pause it and get up and walk around for a little bit, and then I started it back up, which sounds like off-putting, but it's so good. It's so good, and it all is leading somewhere, so there is like a satisfaction at the end of the day. You just have to, go through the storm to appreciate the calm afterwards. But so season 2, I was like very much looking forward to this, and I was seeing people were loving it online. And I was really surprised that the tone of season 2 is so different than season 1. I won't get into like the story stuff because it kind of applies to season 1. But basically, there's like a change, and so now it's like, all right, let's all work together and see how we can do this as a team. Like instead of being at each other's throats to get the job done, like let's work together. And there's like a real camaraderie going on this season, and everyone wanting to work together and support one another and get the job done. And it has a much more peaceful tone and I'm only up to episode 4 out of 10, but it did one of those things that a lot of modern shows are doing now, where you follow one character in an entirely different place, experiencing something that's like, you know what I mean? Where you're not checking in with everybody else. It's like, well, this person goes on a trip and experiences this, and that's this is what that's like for them. And oh man, it was so good. Like I just love this episode. It was really great spending time with this character, and he, ends up working with this chef because this character is one of those people who did not work at the beef restaurant because he wanted to. It was just a job. But through watching this expert chef, he's learning that there's more to cooking than he realized, and he's like, well, I want to learn. I want to try more. And so they basically send him away to go learn from another chef and then be inspired and come back with new ideas. And so for one episode, you spend time with this guy in Denmark, and he's kind of nice and quiet. And so you can imagine on another show, they would pair him up with a chef who's like loud, like a Gordon Ramsay, and maybe a little hard on him. And you would just see that, back and forth or combustion or whatever. But instead, it kind of goes like a more realistic route where it's like, no, he's with a guy who's, serious, and he's wants to get the job done, and he wants this guy to get it right. But he's got kind of a calm temperament, and he's rooting for him. He's not overly nice, but he's also not rude. And so it becomes this more natural thing. And weirdly, I became more invested because of it. Like I didn't want him to let him down because it felt more real or something. And then just watching them grow to kind of like each other and bond in their own way. I mean, it was like a 30-minute episode, and it ended, and I was like, I could watch a whole movie of this. So I'm loving it so far. And it's also making me realize, this goes into a whole other discussion we can get into about the movies and how they're doing right now, and blockbusters and low box office and whatnot. But this isn't a new idea, but it's just, through television shows, you're sort of able to go into those spaces that movies aren't able to go into anymore. Like a Lost in Translation, like you wouldn't have that movie most likely anymore. It'd probably be like Sofia Coppola gets a 6-episode Apple TV series. Right. And it's like, it's making me realize, like, man, I still wish we would get more movies like this. But as long as we don't, I'm glad we're still getting these types of stories, at least on TV or streaming, because I really do enjoy these really character-driven stories. And it's funny because they're doing so well. Like, there's a lot of buzz about them. There's a lot of talk about them. And it makes me wonder if you could still make movies like this and people would show up if there's good buzz about it. But I don't know. I mean, this is like spiraling into a whole other conversation because maybe people just aren't going to the movies, period, anyway. But yeah.
Come ring in the new year in Denver. Celebrate with parties, champagne toasts, live music, and dazzling fireworks. Catch the firework displays from the 16th Street Mall at both 9 p.m. and midnight. And come check out the incredible Mile High Tree, presented by Xfinity, a free one-of-a-kind lights experience. Enjoy sparkling new adventures for a spectacular new year, only in the Mile High City. Plan your celebration and find great hotel packages at milehighholidays.com/NYE.
All aboard for your chance to win $1,000 every week until December 28th. That's right, $1,000 cash just in time for the holidays. To hop on board, just head to churchillmortgage.com and punch your ticket to the Churchill Express giveaway. Visit churchillmortgage.com for your chance to win big.
This is a paid advertisement. NMLS ID 1591. NMLSconsumeraccess.org. Equal housing lender. 1749 Mallory Lane, Suite 100, Brentwood, Tennessee 37027.
Well, I think in that vein, I just this morning revisited Limitless.
The film?
The film, that's right.
Bradley Cooper?
Yeah. The Bradley Cooper film, that's right.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, I haven't seen it since it came out. You've seen it, I'm assuming, right?
When it came out, yeah.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it back then, and my kid has been, my 14-year-old is very funny because he's just been using this summer to just kind of pull up random stuff in my Voodoo library.
Oh yeah,
which is Voluminous, and it's fun for me to kind of see what he. A couple weeks ago, I come downstairs and he's watching Big Trouble in Little China.
Huh.
not a movie I had even mentioned to him, or but it was one of those things. I was like, oh, one of these days I want to watch it with them, and I'm like, oh, like what led him to put on Big Trouble in Little China? That's so interesting.
I was just thinking that, like, that just feels like a quote unquote older film.
Yeah.
I wonder what drew him to that.
Like he's just been, the stuff that he pulls up on his own is just sort of fascinating to me. But this one, I was like, hey, let's watch this, and it's kind of what you're saying. Like it is kind of an artifact from an era that doesn't feel like that long ago, but yeah, I mean, 12 years, that's a while ago.
Yeah.
Where, it cost not that much. I'm going to say around $30 million. And it made, under 200, but against that budget, that's pretty good.
Yeah, like kind of going back to what I was saying and relating to this, what's happening right now at the box office is we're seeing all these blockbusters underperform, right? And the other part of that conversation is that it seems that people are feeling like to put anything out, it has to be IP driven, some sort of brand that people already know. And so you're getting less and less films like Limitless, which are just these sort of original ideas that, you spend a proper amount of money on, and then they do well enough to be successful, and then are still enough to hold interest for your son all these years later, on Vudu, right, and to pick it and enjoy it. And so that's why I'm sort of saying with these shows, like, I just sort of wish, like, I think some of these ideas, like, well, why not try to make this a movie? Because I don't know, if it's good and there's a buzz, like, I don't know, maybe people will come, and then you don't have to spend $330 million on it and then lose a ton of money, like maybe you could correct the ecosystem a little bit.
I think just to correlate to what you're saying, I mean, I think that there's been a tendency for decades at this point where the studios count on, hey, it's that thing I know, and as long as it looks like that thing, you'll keep going. And I think we're starting to see, if not the collapse of that model, at least cracks in that model.
Right.
And it's a culmination of a variety of factors. If I can draw another connection, last week I went to see a comedian perform at the San Jose Improv, and my friend Pervez, who I used to co-host A View's Congruence with, he was like, hey, this comedian is really great, we should go see him. And I'm not going to say his name.
Oh, here we go.
I was like, sure, and we were going together, and he's like, so did you check out any of his stuff on YouTube? And I was like, no, I mean, you said he's good, so I figured I'll just experience it, when we go. And he's like, well, he was good in 2000 or so. So
okay.
Unless he hasn't updated his material at all since then, ha 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 ha. So this guy, and I feel like I don't want to say his name because in case fans of his are listening, but maybe people will be able to figure out. But this guy's whole bit is he does like voices, which is fine. But Brian, here's your first red flag. His recurring thing is he does trailer guy voice.
Okay.
And I'm like, when's the last time trailer guy was a thing?
That is a very good point. Because I'm like, yeah, I understand that. But you're right. Like, would your kids understand that?
No.
Yeah.
Right.
In a world
where that
yeah.
guy. And he's like he'll be like starring Keanu Reeves. Hey, what's going on? He's in over his head. I'm in over my head.
Right.
And I'm like, when's the last time that was a valid Keanu Reeves impression?
Right. Just doing surfer voice. Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Or it's like, also featuring Tom Cruise, and he starts jumping on the couch. I'm like, okay, so and like,
okay, now I'm all caught up on what you're saying.
Right?
Right. That happened almost 20 years ago.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, Tom Cruise has done a fair amount of things since then.
Yeah.
And the couch jump is like not even an asterisk anymore,
Right.
And so that's what I was thinking. And so, the show ends and Perez is like, yeah, I'm sorry about that. I was like, it's all good. I was here for
yeah.
But I was fascinated by that, where I was like, because I was trying to get a read on the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't tell if they were into it or if it was like polite laughter.
Right.
but I can definitely attest before he even got to like the miso sali
right
stuff.
Which we should explain is a reference that Zacky's making right now about bad comedy.
That's not me. Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm not. But that's me doing what he did.
Did he really go that far at some point?
Yeah, and I was well, that's a choice,
Yeah.
So stuff like that, where I'm like, and again, but my point is this, Brian. I mean, obviously the guy's got a career. He's doing okay. He's at the Improv. Doing okay. Like he's a headliner.
Right.
But I'm like who is the audience for that?
You know what? I'm forgetting if this was an offline conversation or we talked about it on the show, but as Indiana Jones, underperforms and The Flash kind of did weird. Actually, Indiana Jones is a better example, but we are reckoning with the fact that, he may be our guy and he might not belong to the current generation at all. And that is weird for me. It makes sense now that I think about it, but I had to be awoken to that fact. You know what I mean? And so maybe this person, he's going to retain his audience and they will age with him. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, no. I think that's that, it's like, well, I guess as long as he's got his faithful, it'll be all right. But
right.
Somebody, I managed to miss it, his heyday, whenever it was. And so for me, I was like, well, this is, I'm not particularly amused by it, and I'm old enough where I get the etymology of the joke, but I'm just like, it's so far away from what's relevant now, like I don't think anybody looks at Keanu Reeves and is like, oh, it's Bill S. Preston or whatever,
Yeah, that's a great point too. Actually, this reminds me of when Matthew Perry put out that autobiography, and he was like referencing Keanu Reeves as a bad actor. Yes, and like that feels like a very
and Brian also that he was alive and should not be.
Yeah, he's like, River Phoenix is dead and Keanu Reeves is alive. Like, explain that, I mean, yes, to be fair, it was much worse than what I just said. But it's like,
be more out of touch.
But it's like his references seem locked into his era. When he was at his height in like the late 90s, early 2000s, that was kind of like what Keanu, you do your Keanu was Bill S. Preston. Or no, I'm sorry, he was Ted Theodore Logan. Pardon me. But now he's John Wick.
That's right.
And we all love him. You know what I mean? Like, so he's, it sounds a little
now he's step. John Effin Wick.
That's right. That's right.
Show the man some respect.
John Wick 4, man.
Respect on his name.
John Wick 4 is awesome, by the way. You should watch that.
I have yet to see. it.
Yeah, it's great.
I'm still. That's the other thing. This year has been, a surplus of supersized movies.
Oh, dude! Seriously.
A lot of bladderbusters this year.
Yes. Oh, I had to pee so bad during Mission Impossible, and I was like, I don't want to miss anything. But then it's like you have something tapping your shoulder for half the movie, and you're like, maybe it's more worth it to get rid of it. I don't know.
Yeah. I was so paranoid about that I went to the bathroom like 3 times before the movie started. Like I went in, I did my business, left, and then as I'm walking out, I'm like, let me just make sure. Go in again. 3 times this happened, Brian.
It's funny. I went with like some friends, and I was like, hey, beer's on me. And so like I got everybody a beer, and they're like, do you want a short or tall? And I was like, tall, my good man. And we're like, tall. And my brother's like, short. I was like, come on, Dan. He's like, no, short. And I was like, in the middle of the movie, I went, oh. Right. Good one, Dan. Really dumb.
All right. Well, now that we've established the state of our respective bladders.
Wait, can I actually keep the bladder conversation? Because I don't know that's going to be able to come back to this.
That's what people subscribe for. So
I have an only in Los Angeles story I have to share. So last night when we were seated for Mission Impossible, I saw actor Clancy Brown enter the theater.
Wow.
So he's the voice of, for starters, he's the sadistic prison guard in Shawshank Redemption. So just seeing his face, you're like, oh crap, And then also he is Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob.
That's right.
Among many, many other things. And so anyway, he comes in and I was like, oh wow, that's so cool. So anyway, after the film, I had to pee so bad. And so I ran to the bathroom and the only urinal was next to him. And it sounds weird, but I was like, cool. So I went over there and I was peeing. And then Bob Marley's Don't Worry, About a Thing, was playing. And I heard him go, with it. And I was like, it's Mr. Krabs. He's humming with Bob Marley next to me at the urinal. It took everything within me to keep a straight face and keep looking forward.
This is the life of Brian.
Wow. Yeah, that was a good one. That was a good one.
Well, let's take a short break. We'll come back, and while Brian contemplates his near piss experience with Clancy Brown, we'll let our sponsors do their thing.
Woodhouse Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram is bringing you more this holiday season, finishing the year with big savings on the entire model lineup during the Wrap Up the Year sales event. Save up to $13,000 off MSRP on a 2024 Ram 1500 Crew Cab Laramie 4x4 for qualified buyers. Explore all our year-end lease and finance deals at WoodhouseCDJRBellevue.com or WoodhouseChryslerJeepDodge.com. This is Woodhouse, with approved credit, tax title license extra, when financed with Chrysler Capital. $299 doc fee due at signing. Stock number BC240134. Offer expires 12/31/2023. See dealer for details.
The holidays start here at Baker's with a variety of options to celebrate traditions old and new. You could do a classic herb-roasted turkey or spice it up and make turkey tacos. Serve up a go-to shrimp cocktail or use Simple Truth wild-caught shrimp for your first Cajun risotto. Make creamy mac and cheese or a spinach artichoke fondue from our selection of Murray's cheese. No matter how you shop, Baker's has all the freshest ingredients to embrace all your holiday traditions. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
And we are back. And hey, we got an armload of listener letters with regards to our last episode, Brian. So I just wanted to cycle through some of these.
Yeah. Sorry, you just unlocked a memory for me. I think when I was working on a movie one time, I wish I could remember what I said. I think we were looking at a schedule and I was with the post supervisor and I was like, oh yeah, we got a metric butt ton of blah, 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 blah. And the guy he just stopped and just looked at me and he went, a metric butt ton. And I was like, yeah. And then he just then he would look back and then he just moved on. It stopped him in his tracks. And then he contemplated it, repeated it, and then just his brain started working again and went back to the task at hand. And you just unlocked that memory. I remember thinking yeah, well, I guess I could have said that another way. I don't know.
You know what's funny is recently, and God darn it, I wish I could remember the specific context. Somebody said, now there's something you could set your watch to.
Yes!
And it made me think of you.
So who said that?
It was in life. It was, I don't remember. It was in my life though. Just, and that's a thing that I know you've said it in the past and you're like, nobody gets it.
Yeah. I said it in a writer's room once and no one knew what I was talking about. And I was like, no, that's it's like a crew cut hair top. It's precise. It's something you can set your watch to. And I Googled it and there is absolutely no reference to this other than The Simpsons. And I was like, oh, maybe that isn't actually a phrase. So that's why I'm so curious who said it.
I don't know. Maybe that person internalized that same Simpsons reference.
It just makes so much sense. How could it not be a thing?
Maybe we can will it into existence.
Okay, done.
We can re-meme it.
Yeah.
So here's a message. This is from Jason via Twitter, and he says, "Thank you for your thoughtful reply to my question about whether there was any way The Flash could have been a hit." You might remember, Brian, last time we fielded this question, and we delved into that little catastrophe, which is now, by the way, worth mentioning as we chronicle the continuing collapse of that movie. It's now, this is true, the biggest flop in Warner Brothers' 100-year history.
I keep hearing this and seeing this, and my brain will not compute it. Because usually it's something that's just so understandable. I can't even think of something off the top of my head, but it's just sort of like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense that flopped. But I think because you and I actually enjoyed it, and Federica enjoyed it, my brother, everybody I've talked to has actually enjoyed it. I can't wrap my head around that this is something everybody doesn't like and that flopped this catastrophically. I just can't compute it. But here we are. So Jason continues, "Now after listening to your Indiana Jones conversation, let me ask the same thing again. Do you see any scenario where Dial of Destiny could have been successful?" I have a thought, but I want to hear you first.
Well, I can see several scenarios where Dial of Destiny could have been successful. I mean, every one of those timelines involves not spending $300+ million.
That's my answer. That's my answer. Yeah.
I mean, right there. There's your cul-de-sac.
Well, and also, I'm guilty of this and realizing it now too. Oh, guilty sounds harsh, but I'm realizing that the world isn't plugged into Indiana Jones as much as I am, or as much as the world was 15 years ago. Like, that feels sort of like the tail end of the world being plugged into Indiana Jones and it making almost $1 billion. And I think it would have been wise to realize, hey, this will be popular, but this might not be $1 billion grossing movie. So let's, work accordingly, budget, whatever, and make something that will be a success in its own right. And, so I think a little more thinking through might have helped, and you could still tell the same story. You could still do whatever you wanted to do, bring that budget down to something more reasonable. And then it is a quote unquote hit. But unfortunately they shot past the moon, and thought it would make like Marvel money. And then sadly it gets, the distinction of, a disappointment.
Yeah, and just to add to that, another factor that really worked against it was the passage of time, in that, when Disney purchased Lucasfilm, that was 2012, and my recollection is that another Indiana Jones was part of the conversation as early as back then.
Sure.
And in fact, now that I think about it, I mean, I think they even, after Crystal Skull, they had been talking about it,
Yeah.
And I feel like the window to get this movie out was maybe in the immediate aftermath of Force Awakens.
Yeah, sure. Riding that Lucasfilm wave there, yeah.
They went all in on Star Wars initially. I mean, understandably, but I just feel like there was a ticking clock attached, and look, we can't. Even as the character's age is a central part of the film, and for me that was part of what made it appealing. But I mean, I think Harrison Ford aged out of even the curiosity factor, right? So in other words, in 2015 you had his return as Han Solo. In 2017 you had his return as Rick Deckard. Maybe in 2016 you just slot in his last Indiana Jones movie, and you get like your little trilogy right there.
Right.
As of now, it's made, I think, $270 million worldwide, which is not great. Even separate from the budget, because it's probably going to top out at somewhere around $300 million, and Crystal Skull made something like $700 million. So there's all these factors at work, but definitely you say, well, you bring that budget down, and that it seems very obvious from our end, but
sure. Sure, yeah.
Spend less,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned this in our last episode that maybe some of those hard choices that the writers mentioned not having to make because they had that Lucasfilm budget, maybe it would have been good to have to make those choices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
with that in mind, I want to continue that discussion. We got another note from Dan Kiedis. This is via Instagram. It says, hey, fella, loved your discussion of indie. I'm always saddened, if not surprised, by how many people cry woke when a woman is used in films in a context other than sex trophy. It kind of irks me that the doomcocks of this world and their followings might have had any impact at all, however small, on the film's performance. Your discussion made me ruminate on the things I liked about it and consider things that maybe passed me by, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it again. I liked that it shows Indy's relationship to his age. He's no longer Dr. Sexy. He's overlooked and underestimated by a younger generation that's looking to the stars rather than what lies beneath the ground. Especially liked the moments where he tries to pull out a few of his old moves but wasn't quite fast or dexterous enough for that punch or that sleight of hand. At no point did it feel, Brian, like they keistered the ass.
I agree. But the friends I saw Mission Impossible with last night, two of them were people who were not fans of seeing people not enjoying, Dr. Jones's class or being able to keep up or feeling sad. Especially, it gets referenced a lot, like the, seeing him in his underwear in a small apartment with noisy neighbors. Like, that just wasn't what they wanted to see. And I get it. I really do. Like, I understand that. But just speaking for us, like, I am happy that we were okay with that story because we felt like that story was at least told well. But, yeah.
But Brian, what's so fascinating to me is even as watching it never. And look, man, I anyone who listens to this show knows how much you and I both love this character. So it's not like we're some Johnny come latelys to this thing, right? Mm-hmm. And at no point was I like, oh, this movie is disrespecting Indiana Jones. It never even crossed my mind.
No, disrespect, not at all. No.
Right? And so that's what I like, because I've seen this multiple times. Oh, the movie insults Indy. It's so disrespectful. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like, I mean, I'm like, what's happened to media literacy? And just to be very clear about this, I agree with you. Look, if you just don't like the character being depicted in this way, hey, you know what? That's just, that's fine. I mean, what can you do? Right?
Yeah.
But to be like, oh, the film is insulting Indy because you have a character who is initially somewhat dismissive of him, as if that's not part of A, the character's arc, and B, that one character's point of view represents the film's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And just picking up on what we talked about last time, the idea that somehow Harrison Ford was some unwitting or unwilling even, stowaway on this.
Right.
Like, he wasn't on board for every choice that was made about his character. His character.
Yeah, well, you sent me that video, the interview of him saying it was important to him that we see Indy in his underwear in an apartment with the TV on, and this is where he's at, and this is like his, one last adventure story. Like, that's the story Harrison Ford wanted to tell. And again, there's nothing wrong with not liking that. Like, if it's not for you, I can absolutely appreciate that's just not the time, that's just not the way they want to see this person. But I agree with you. I don't think the movie in any way is being disrespectful to the character or dismissive or whatever the word was said.
If while watching, after we got done, it never would have even crossed my mind that this would become another Last Jedi situation.
Wow. Is there really? I guess I haven't really followed the discourse to see that it had gotten
a lot of that same thing. And by the way, anybody who knows me knows I vehemently disagree with that characterization of Last Jedi, but nonetheless, that's out there, right? Oh, it demeans this, legendary character and blah, 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 Lucasfilm did it again, another Last Jedi. And I'm just like, again, it never would have even crossed my mind that this would become that in the narrative, but here we are.
Yeah, no, same.
James Mangold gave a really great in-depth interview to a Hollywood Reporter, and one of the points he talked about in response to being asked about this, sort of the upset, he said that there's a point where these characters become symbols more than characters. And so there becomes this anxiety that if you examine the humanity of a hero, you somehow weaken them.
Right.
And for me, I think it's the weaknesses that are interesting. And Indiana Jones has always been defined by sort of his humanity, right? Like the stuff where, oh God, here's the that German engineer.
Oh, you really want to do this? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to fight you. Yeah.
So that has been interesting to see. And I think if nothing else, you say, well, these films exist as a closed circuit now. It's these 5, and that's the box set forever.
Right.
And so I think I fully expect the narrative is going to change and evolve over time. I'm very curious. I should say, my children, they all enjoyed it. I think my 14-year-old, he's like, I thought Crystal Skull was better. But I liked it because he likes them all.
Right.
And that's my point.
I was going to say, almost ironically, obviously the original trilogy, to our minds, I think we would agree, is pretty perfect, right? Like we love those 3 films. And so then sometimes you don't want them to keep going and accidentally make something that isn't as good or doesn't feel like it sits as comfortably next to the other. But then there's this ironic thing where the more they make, then you're almost more comfortable when one isn't as good as the other.
Absolutely.
And so for me, like the original 3 are the original 3. Like if I'm ever going to binge something throughout the week or, whatever, it'll probably be those 3. But like Skull is there for me to like, oh yeah, like I popped it on before I watched it, the Dial of Destiny, and I was like, yeah, I just don't remember this one very well, and there is fun to be had in it, but I'll probably never like it as much as the others. And then there's this one too, like, well, now there's this also, and I liked it a little bit better, and I kind of liked it. Well, then I don't have to visit this one as much, but this one will be fun to go to again at some point. And then I always have the 3 I'll never get tired of,
What's wrong with that? I ask you. Here's a message we got from Omar Saeed, and this is from Threads, Brian.
Ooh.
Social
look
media.
At us.
I know.
Or more like look at Omar, but...
He says, good episode as always. I also enjoyed Dial of Destiny, though I'm not as well versed as you and Brian in Indy, but I'm just as much a fan of The Fugitive as you.
Brother.
Many of the New York scenes reminded me of The Fugitive, including the telephone call, wrongly accused of murder, and escaping during a parade. The parade had the same bagpipe music.
The same music?
That I can't speak to because I don't remember.
But still, same vibe.
Same vibe, certainly. He says the character cameos were all well done, fulfilled my expectations. And I mentioned this before in the 1951 or 52 flashback scene. They made Harrison Ford look like Richard Kimball,
right down to that tan coat,
that jacket, exactly. Yep. And so I was like, all right, well, somebody on there is a fan of that movie.
Yeah. That's good though. I love that. I can't believe I didn't think of it, but that parade,
the parade, absolutely, yeah. That movie, by the way, celebrates its 30th anniversary next month. Crazy, huh?
Wow, maybe we should do a commentary on our commentary of The Fugitive.
That commentary, if you remember, we had to record it twice. Do you remember that?
Oh, I do. Yep.
Yeah. So those of you dig into the archives and hear our Fugitive commentary know that is us realizing that the first go through didn't take.
Yeah, I can't remember what the problem was, but it's hard with that because you go through. There's a spontaneity to it and an energy and like it's happening in real time before us, and then you're sort of like when you have to do it again, you're like, oh, can I find that? Can I find that energy again? But
I think we did. That's my memory. I haven't listened to that track, but I think we acquitted ourselves well.
I think and I think what helps is that we love the movie so much. I think the movie energizes us. Yeah.
Here's a message from Tyler Kloster on Facebook who says a couple quick hit reactions, and this is again to our Dial of Destiny episode. He says, the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, where Lucas thought what the audience really wanted was history lessons.
Right.
You mean you don't?
Right.
I bailed after a couple episodes and then came back for the bigly hyped Harrison Ford appearance, only for him to have all of 3 minutes of screen time or so. Still bitter.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
3 minutes of him sitting in a chair
with a saxophone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says, I can accept that at this point Harrison Ford as Indy and Michael Keaton as Batman are not the nostalgic draw for people under 30 or so as they might be for people of my age. And yet we're 1 year removed from Top Gun Maverick, trying to draw on nostalgic appeal from the exact same era and becoming one of the biggest movies of all time. How do we explain that? And I should mention here, I had meant to mention Top Gun Maverick last time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I had my theory. I was like, I think after 30 years, you're kind of done at that point. You have become a niche curiosity. And so, indeed, to Tyler's point, how do we account for this all-time blockbuster, Top Gun Maverick?
I have feelings that have not quite turned into thoughts yet. What do you have?
Well, I think it's just a unicorn of a thing, for one.
Certainly that.
Right? I think that you had residual goodwill from Top Gun that has never gone away. I think you had the novelty of it being the one and only Top Gun sequel we've ever gotten.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had probably the most important deceptively overlooked part of this whole mix, which is that it just kicked all form of ass.
I know. Like, even watching Mission Impossible, which we'll get to, and I did really enjoy, but I was like, man, Maverick, it was really old school. Mm-hmm. Like, it was in some ways people, sort of compared its mission to Star Wars, which is completely fair. But it's like, yeah, that there's just something you can't deny that is so satisfying about an impossible obstacle that people, who are counted out, overcome. Like, and it's just as simple as that. And it really, really was old school in that way, and was so damn satisfying and so fun. And then you get the word of mouth being like, for anybody who wasn't maybe going to check it out, it's like, no, you get that was fun. Like, that was great. You should see it. And then it just became what it became. Like, I've not spoken with one person who didn't like that movie, which is, I can't think of the last movie that was the case.
Yeah. Well, and just to add to that, it was coming on the other side of the pandemic where I think people were really looking for something new and different.
Yes.
Which helped. And there wasn't a ton of competition last summer.
That's a good point too. Yeah.
Right? Like, you had Jurassic World Dominion.
Right.
You had Maverick. And like a handful of other things. But the box, like, this year, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's back to sort of pre-pandemic release schedule where you'll get sort of like Barbie and Oppenheimer. It's like you're getting two hotly anticipated movies on the same day, where we haven't seen that in years. Yeah. Like, everything's been so spaced out and had a bigger opportunity to thrive. Yeah.
I wonder if any other year, I wonder for that matter, if Maverick would have done as well before the pandemic. I'm going to say maybe no. Like, I think there was this convergence of factors that led to it doing what it did.
It brought a lot of people back. I think that was the first movie my parents went back to the theater for. Okay. Yeah.
And it didn't rely on having seen Top Gun. That's the other thing.
Yeah. Smart.
I think obviously there's texture there for people who know the character, but I think if you're, because I know plenty of my students who watched Maverick first and then they went back and watched the first one.
Is that so interesting? Yeah. I would be curious to ask them why they went, especially when it seems to be like, oh, well, people are going to the theaters less and less, even, especially younger generations. I wonder what got them to be like, oh, I have to go buy a ticket for this.
Right. I don't know, but Tyler continues, on the subject of a commentary track for a movie you gentlemen despise. I don't know how you guys feel about this one, but since you mentioned M. Night Shyamalan earlier in the podcast, a track for Lady in the Water would be pretty fun to listen to. It would not be fun to watch, I'll tell you that. That's me speaking. As the movie where the audience pretty much turned on him and he didn't really make a comeback for close to a decade. A totally random idea for a commentary, but it did pop in my head. I feel like we need to do like a Shyamalan movie we do like first.
Have we not done any?
None. Zero.
Whoa. I mean, like Unbreakable or something would be fun.
Unbreakable. Sixth Sense, certainly.
Of course. Yeah, Sixth Sense, there's so much going on in that movie, yeah.
Yes, those first three, Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, and Signs are pretty darn good as far as I'm concerned.
Same. Yeah, I think
after that it gets it gets a little dodgy.
Gets a little dicey, but yeah, Lady in the Water, I do remember in the theater, he like lost me during the movie, and for me, it almost felt like that game where someone's like, I'll say a sentence, let's tell a story. Like I'll say a sentence and then you say the next sentence and then someone else says the next sentence. Like it just felt like it was being made up as it went along.
Was it when he shows up as the most important writer in the world or whatever the hell?
Which, for people who haven't seen it, that happens. He plays the writer whose writing will be so important it changes the world. It's so funny.
To this day, I remember this is when, it must have been when Signs came out. He was on the cover of Newsweek or some such thing, and it's like, the next Spielberg. You know?
I remember that,
and I remember thinking at the time, I'm like, that's probably not going to age well. And that was, I wasn't even like anti-Shyamalan, but I was just like maybe don't put that on there, you know? Like,
yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah. Well, and I remember him saying, there's some quote where he was like, I know Spielberg's secret. And I always remember thinking, like, whether you do or not, I'm curious what you think it is. Like, I'm just kind of curious what he thinks, the little nugget he knows that he's not going to share. Like, what is that?
It'd be funny if you get him on the record and he's just like, he shoots movies and edits them.
right.
And adds music. It's like that. Remember that SNL, the bank commercial?
Yes.
Where I think it's Jim Downey. He's like, we will take our clients and make a list of their names.
Yes.
We will write down how much money they have and put it in the list. You know?
Yeah, right. Yes.
You're like, he has music play in the background.
Right. Right, exactly.
Like, oh, this is it.
That is true. That does happen, and his movies happen to be very good.
That's true. You can't argue with his autopsy of that there. Tyler also mentions, since I know Zachy loves the Universal monsters, which I do, how about possibly a commentary for the old Lugosi Dracula movie to celebrate the release of The Last Voyage of the Demeter movie next month or possibly for Halloween? I would actually be all about that because I am not a fan of the Lugosi Dracula. I think it's one of the worst of those Universal monster movies. Like, other than Bela Lugosi playing Dracula, that movie is just a freaking snooze.
Really? This is sort of a blind spot for me, but I have not seen any of those films. Not Frankenstein.
I think with Dracula, which was the first one out the chute, and that was, whatever it was, 1931 or something. It was a pure adaptation of the stage play. So it's the equivalent of watching, PBS or whatever when they would just show you video of a play.
Sure. And
like Bela Lugosi is very iconic in their role, but I mean there have been better Draculas. And you've seen Ed Wood, I'm assuming, right?
Seen what? Oh, seen him? Like images of him, yeah.
No, the movie Ed Wood, where Martin.
Oh, Ed Wood. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you say. Yes. Well, as soon as you said Bela Lugosi, that's what I think of as Ed Wood.
Yeah, and that gets into like all the issues he had in his career. Well, it's because like that's the only role he could play.
Right.
And what's funny is he only played Dracula twice. It's not like he was, one time in 1930 something, and then like in the late 50s in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Those are the only two times he ever played Dracula. And yet it's the role that he could not escape,
Mm-hmm.
But I have those thoughts. But the difference, my point is, like Frankenstein, certainly the first two Frankensteins directed by James Whale, well, he brought a cinematic eye, and it's it is stagey and it's very theatrical, but he kind of figured it out.
Right.
James Whale was like, I know Spielberg's secret. By God, he proved it.
He's like, we're going to have some music in there.
That's right. And they didn't have music until the second one, until Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh, really? Huh.
So I would say skip Dracula is my point. And watch the first two Frankensteins and see if they don't tickle something in you.
All right, cool.
Here's a message we got from James Olsen, who in my mind he goes by Jimmy Olsen. I'd like to believe that.
Yeah, right.
He says, I discovered your podcast 3 months ago and love it.
Oh.
Thank you, James.
Yeah, thank you.
I've been going backwards through your catalog and just listened to your commentary track for Age of Ultron and enjoyed your views on it and how it transitions the storyline into the Infinity Age for the MCU. However, you did not bring up the rumored 3.5-hour-long director's cut that Joss Whedon was supposed to debut when the film hit Blu-ray later that year in 2015. Any idea whatever happened to this rumored version of the movie? I should say, I reading James's message, I was like, oh yeah, I guess that was a thing.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where there's a lot of that, right? Where there's always the extended cut, which inevitably gets cut down. But this was something where Whedon himself had evinced frustration that sort of his version of the movie, he wasn't able to make the movie he wanted to make. And I would say, given that Joss Whedon has lived a completely blameless life since Age of Ultron came out, I'm sure we'll be seeing that extended cut anytime now. The Whedon cut.
Yeah. That's interesting that he personally had a 3.5-hour cut. That's pretty long.
Yeah, but that's usually how it is, right? He gets his cut and then he screens it and then they make notes, and right?
Oh, for sure. But I mean, just one that he felt. I mean, usually when I think of in the editing process, a director's cut is usually like a couple weeks after production's wrapped. This is what I feel pretty good about, knowing there will be notes and changes and whatever. So
yeah, I
was like, oh, so there's like a 3.5-hour cut he is happy with that he feels is finished. It's pretty hefty.
And again, I expect it will never see the light of day because I don't think anyone wants to get anywhere near anything Whedon related at this moment.
Right. Unless they could call it like Ultimate Edition or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that as it stands, Joss Whedon is currently lying down in a grave he dug for himself, career-wise.
Yeah.
So screw that guy. Anyway, James also says, is there any hope for the commentary tracks on the following? Inception? That's something we've talked about. Inglourious Bastards? That would actually... We've never done Tarantino. We should actually...
Yeah, we definitely,
James also suggests Reservoir Dogs. No. What Lies Beneath, which...
Nope. I'm just kidding. I'm just saying nope about everything. I love all these movies. So yeah, these are all great. Yes, and we were talking about that. Because we were saying that Zemeckis treads horror, or approaches it, but doesn't like dive into the pool. But someone had written in, I'm sorry, I forgot who, but said What Lies Beneath, and we're like, oh yeah, he did. He made a horror movie.
That was the whole twist, was that Harrison Ford was playing a slightly unsavory character.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, my wife is Michelle Pfeiffer. I don't like her very much. It's a lot of that.
Yeah.
And also the first two Star Trek reboot movies, directed by J.J. Abrams. I'm actually surprised we have not done the 2009 Star Trek. I feel like we could have a good discussion about that.
I was going to say it's probably checking off someone's bingo card, but I was about to say I can't believe we haven't done that 2009 Star Trek.
Yeah. Well, there's always time. There's always time for that.
Yeah, all these are great.
James concludes, you guys have really provided a slew of insightful and hilarious anecdotes that really brighten my days. Well, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, that means a lot. Thank you.
Let's take another short break. We got a couple headlines to discuss.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
And we are back, and here's some sad news, Brian. I wanted to mention this last time, but of course, our last episode was ridiculously supersized.
Yes, yeah.
It is, I believe, the same length as Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Yeah, which is crazy.
We did not have any of the de-aging technology during our episode, so it came in substantially lower budget-wise, but same length.
Yep.
Alan Arkin passed away.
Yeah. That was sad. He's just one of those beloved figures. You know, he just shows up in a movie and you're like, oh, good. You know?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I mentioned this certainly during our Rocketeer commentary track, that he gave the commencement address, my graduation from Columbia College in 2002. And I remember being just tickled by the fact that PV from the Rocketeer was there in front of me. You know?
Definitely. I mean, that was my introduction to him for certain. And he was he's so perfect for that. That sort of fatherly, mischievous, helper, mentor role,
Yeah. And what made me kind of happy was that Billy Campbell, who played the Rocketeer in that movie, when he, when Alan Arkin passed away, he tweeted about him with such fondness, right? Like the idea of like, this is somebody who I had looked up to, and they say don't meet your heroes because you'll always be disappointed. And it's like, here's the exception to that rule: somebody who played the same role in his life that he played for his character in the movie. And I'm like, that's just nice,
Yeah, that's nice to hear.
But of course, above and beyond the Rocketeer, he was in Catch-22 back in the day, which I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I haven't. That's always on my list of books I want to read.
Read the book, then watch the movie.
Yeah.
I think the movie is a disappointment in relation to the book, but I think the movie is still good. So, and I think largely on the back of Alan Arkin in the lead role as Yossarian. That movie came out right around the same time as MASH, the movie MASH. And they're both kind of doing the same thing.
Right.
Where it's like a satirical look at military bureaucracy. And I think MASH kind of took the sort of ate up most of the conversation, but I think both of them are interesting. And like I said, Alan Arkin as a result of that. Also in Argo, which I just rewatched recently, he is so freaking good in Argo.
Yeah, definitely. And, Little Miss Sunshine, and the one that I thought of, which I don't always think of off the top of my head with him, is when he plays the dad in Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah, that's right.
He's so great in that role. He plays the perfect suburban dad. And I wouldn't call him like aloof. Like, he is a little bit like removed from the family and the chaos. And he plays that perfectly because he's got this person with scissors for hands, but he's like, oh, now Edward, come on, like, we got to help you out. You need to get a job. Like, he just plays this perfect sort of father. And when Edward gets arrested for breaking into the place, he's like, no, that's, you don't break the law, son. Like, he's just so good in that role. It's so great.
A couple other memorable roles. He by the later in his career, he was doing primarily featured supporting roles that he was very good in. Oftentimes better than the movie. He was really good in Get Smart as the chief.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was in Firewall opposite Harrison Ford.
I've never seen that.
I feel like that's one of the last starring Harrison Ford action movies, right? Before other than Indiana Jones and stuff,
With Indy, I've been in a bit of a Harrison Ford, I want to rewatch some of these movies, just like Witness or something. And that in my head, I was like, I wonder if that'll be something I enjoy just as a little time capsule artifact sort of thing. Like when you recommend these 90s movies.
I've had much the same conversation with myself about Firewall specifically, where I sat there I'm kind of feeling like watching this. I've never seen it.
Yeah. Expectations set, but I'm in the mood for that kind of movie from that era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, fun fact, Alan Arkin was the first actor after Peter Sellers to play Inspector Clouseau.
Really?
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a movie called Inspector Clouseau, which was completely separate from the Blake Edwards Pink Panther movies.
I'd be curious to see his take on that character.
The movie is not good. But you having gone through, I think you watched all of them, right? Or most of them, the Pink Panthers?
Yeah. Well, I thought I had. Didn't see this one.
Did you stick with it through the post Sellers, digging up Peter Sellers' corpse and making it dance like Weekend at Bernie's movies?
Gosh, I'm trying to remember now.
Because there's a couple where they're we're not going to let death stop us. This is Hollywood pre-AI, by the way. In now.
Wait,
they'd have a deep fake puppet of Peter Sellers now.
Yeah. Wait, what was it? Using existing footage and cobbling together a movie?
Yes. I believe it's called The Search for the Pink Panther.
Maybe I didn't.
That's right. And that was shortly after he died. No, I'm sorry. It's called Curse of the Pink Panther.
I'm looking it up.
And Clouseau, yeah, that's the thing. Clouseau is missing. And so it's all, the entire movie is kind of doing a Citizen Kane type thing where you have a character who's interviewing various characters.
Interesting.
From the Pink Panther movies. And then we get, it's it's so freaking ridiculous. It's like a 90-minute clip show episode of the Pink Panther.
I don't think I saw this one.
Yeah. That was very shortly. So they used outtakes and, lookalikes from the back and stuff. And then it ends with Roger Moore is Clouseau. He got facial surgery and that's what Clouseau looks like now. Super
wow.
weird.
A lot of leaps and lengths to make that one.
Yeah. And then the next one after that, it's called Trail of the Pink Panther, I think. And at that, yeah. Okay, no. So I got my okay. So the Trail of the Pink Panther is the one I'm talking about.
Okay.
That's the one with the stock footage. Curse of the Pink Panther. This is way too much time. I didn't realize. Curse of the Pink Panther is the one that comes after. That's the one where they were like, okay, we need a new guy, and so it's what's his name? Ted Wass, who's the dad from Blossom.
I was gonna say, why does that name ring a bell?
Yeah. And he's Detective Doofusman or whatever the hell, I don't know his name, but
right.
And he's just an idiot bumbling, but he's an American.
Okay.
And so they completely lost the thread. And so that's the one where Roger Moore shows up at some point as Clouseau.
Oh, with a facial reconstruction.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
So anyway, where was I going to? Anyway, so that's one of the. Sorry.
So rest in peace, Alan Arkin.
So Alan Arkin was in one as Clouseau, and my memory is that he himself was not a fan of having been in that movie.
Sure.
It's not particularly well regarded, but it's it's kind of an interesting a little sidelight there.
Yeah, it's kind of nice that he had such a large, celebrated, robust career that could exist as a footnote, and he could be like, "Oh, that one," but it's he's got everything else that everyone remembers more.
That's right. So Alan Arkin, he will be missed. A true giant in this field, and by all accounts, a lovely person. Which so often we say this, like that's ultimately the most important measure.
Of course. Yeah.
We were talking about deep fakery and other things moments ago, and that ties directly into the big news of this week, which is that SAG is on strike.
Yeah, so now we have the WGA and SAG on strike. And so, I mean, pretty much, with the WGA on strike, it seemed like a lot of shows were shutting down, but some were continuing, just contingent that they would not be writing new things or improvising. So that was the whole thing, right? Like Deadpool 3 is shooting, and there is, articles being like, yes, but he can't improvise because, the writers are on strike. But now that SAG's on strike, the actors, it seems like pretty much everything is shutting down because there's just, what can you do? So this is pretty major. This is going to disrupt, most importantly, I mean, like a lot of lives, but also I think in the coming months and certainly the year, you're going to see the impact of this with television and movies and everything else.
It is crazy because it seems pretty clear cut to me that there is such an imbalance between how much the studios and executives are making.
Oh, yeah.
Versus, like just average folks. Whether in terms of actors, whether we're talking about, notwithstanding your superstars, but like the people who are, who have one or two lines and they count on residuals and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then your writers, right? Just like average folks.
Yep.
And so the fact that you've had people actually giving interviews with their name on it and everything, where they're like, well, I think what they're asking for is just disgraceful, frankly,
Right.
As they straighten their ascot and take a puff of that cigarette like out of the holder, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's so out of whack, and there was a thing that broke on Deadline this past week where you had an unnamed person talking about how their specific goal is to make the strike last long enough that it causes people to lose their homes. Here's the quote. Is again an unnamed studio executive. The end game is to allow things to drag on until union members start losing their apartments and losing their houses.
I mean, do you hear? Like, that's ghoulish.
That is like if you had Mr. Burns say that on The Simpsons, they would be in the writer's room. They'd be like, that seems like a little on the nose.
Like, you're supposed to at least like him a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that is just. It's almost like it's just too much. You're like, take it back a little bit. We won't believe that's a real person. Like I just can't. When I read that, I could not believe it.
In response to that, actor Ron Perlman did a live stream. Did you see this?
No.
He was talking about that specific comment about how you want union members to lose their houses, and he says, "This is Ron Perlman. We know who said that and where he effing lives."
Ah! And then he revved a motorcycle and drove away. Uh-oh.
Goes on. You wish that on people. You wish that on people while you make $27 million a year for creating nothing. Be careful, MFer. Be really careful. Because that's the kind of shit that stirs shit up.
Wow. Right? It's funny. I gotta hear his low guttural purr as he says that.
Remotely do justice to his delivery, but you watch that and you're like, man, if he's talking to me, that's the point where I piss my pants right there.
Yeah.
It's just a puddle.
Yeah, and it's crazy. I mean, I'm not as up on all the negotiation points with SAG, but the one that a lot of people are bringing up that I thought was crazy was, with background actors, right? Did you see this? They want to do like digital scans of background actors and then be able to use those images, likenesses, whatever you want to call it, in perpetuity and never pay them. Like what?
And you can imagine them presenting that deal and being like, huh?
Right, no, it's like Dr. Evil level ideas. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's so. I mean, But that, when you hear that, you're like, that's crazy pants. And so it just really drives home that like we are at like a moment. I mean, this is a huge moment where everything can change. You know, moving forward, the way that things are done with the technology that is now emerging, we are at a point where everything can change. And so it is just so vital to have some sort of regulation to this. Otherwise, it is just going to be the Wild West.
Yeah.
You know?
It might even be the Wild Wild West, which we really don't want.
Which is even worse.
Akin to that Will Smith movie, and nobody wants that. Nobody.
No.
I do find it interesting that SAG had this, the strike deadline approaching, but not just a couple of weeks ago, the DGA also had a strike deadline approaching, and they ended up coming to some kind of a deal.
Yeah, I need to read up on all this more because I know about that, but I don't know what they were asking for, what they ended up getting. I'm not quite sure about that.
I do feel like most likely the producers had, kind of a divide and conquer strategy. And I guess to some extent it paid off because they were able to peel off the directors. Because if you have the DGA, the WGA, and SAG on strike,
right.
I mean, that's game over at that point.
I know. And I mean, there's no version of this where I want anyone on strike because it's not good for people. But like when I saw that the actors were going to go on strike, I was like, oh, well, I really hope that at least helps. Like that is going to shut down so many things, and like it could help the hurt, for the studios, because it's like now you really like things are going to have to stop. And so, I mean, who knows where they're sitting, and with the money that many of them, not all of them, but most of those people in those towers are making, maybe they can hold out for a while. So who knows? But man, yeah, I mean, I think it goes without saying we're obviously in support of everyone on strike right now, and we just want there to be fair deals and livable wages, and we support everyone getting paid and being treated fairly.
And just to reiterate, I mean the amount of compensation that these executives get is wildly exorbitant. In relation to the fact that they're making that money on the backs of other people's creativity.
Right.
Like, we can't underscore that enough, I don't think. Like, Bob Iger making, $30 million a year.
Right.
And I'm like, hey, you know what? Go make that money. That's fine, right? However, look after the people who are getting you that money.
I know it's like things change, like the world moves forward, but in an effort to save a buck, people don't want to revise paying people. Yeah. Even though you have to as things move forward and inflation and technology changes and whatever. So it's like you need to reevaluate, the system or the metric or whatever it is. And it's like, yeah, but it'd be a lot cheaper if we didn't, while they make more and more and more millions, and
That's
it's,
right.
Yeah.
And it's worth reiterating also that the purpose of a strike is you are trying to disrupt the system. That's the point. So when people say, end this strike, it's disruptive. Congratulations, you figured it out.
Right. Yes, exactly, yeah.
So that's going to be a developing story. And by the way, it's worth mentioning that there is a follow-on effect of all of this. As an entertainment journalist, these strikes affect me.
Right.
I have had opportunities like press avails that I'm not able to go to, and therefore I'm not able to write a story, and so I don't make money on that. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, it spills out in so many ways. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're not only will actors not be doing films or TV or whatever, but yeah, they can't do press. That's right. And I was thinking about the whole the Barbie thing, because there's just been so much like viral content coming from all those interviews, and Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling with puppies, and all these like funny quotes and stuff. And I was like, wow, they got lucky, right? They got right at the tail end of that and got to have this huge sort of buzzy campaign, but that's probably going to be the last one we see for a while.
Well, I was reading about how the cast of Oppenheimer got up and left the premiere.
Yeah, when it was officially announced, the SAG strike. Yeah,
crazy, right?
Yeah.
You might say they blew that shit up.
Very good.
Thank you. So there's a new trailer that just dropped this week, Brian. I wanted to get your thoughts on this.
What was it?
Well, it's a movie about how Willy became Wonka.
Ah, yes. Well, I already saw that. That was in the Tim Burton version, right? Wasn't his dad a dentist? So
I'd forgotten that there's a whole backstory that's already woven into that movie.
Right? Is it Christopher Lee, right? Isn't he his dad?
Christopher Lee?
He's like, if you eat candy, you will die. Or I'm making that up. But it's some sort of...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the movie called Wonka, the new mega budget flop in the making. I'm just going to go ahead and say. Probably.
So what'd you think, Zach?
Well, let's play some of the audio of this first, because I want to talk specifically about this.
Okay.
I've spent the past 7 years traveling the world perfecting my craft. You see, I'm something of a magician, inventor, and chocolate maker. So quiet up and listen down. Nope, scratch that, reverse it.
Mr. Wonka, I can see you're a man of great ingenuity. What are you doing?
I'm making chocolate, of course. How do you like it? Dark, white, nutty, absolutely insane.
So, this movie cost $125 million, Brian.
Well, that's a lot, but better than some others.
So on the upside, we can say, well, it didn't cost Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny money.
Yeah.
However, and you know what? I will eat all the crow if this thing is a success. But I watched this trailer, and as God is my witness, I said, that is a Saturday Night Live trailer parody.
Yes.
That aired the week Timothée Chalamet hosted.
Yes.
You can never convince me that is a real movie.
Yeah. Well, that was what I went into it with. Because I think you texted it to me. And I will say this. It's not for me. And I was like, oh, yeah, all right, yeah, I know what this is. And then I saw that it was directed by Paul King, who did Paddington and Paddington 2. And I went, oh, okay. So, I started to give it a little bit of, benefit of the doubt. Well, I don't know. I like what he does when he tries to do whimsy. But I think what wasn't working for me was Chalamet.
Right.
He looked very uncomfortable playing an eccentric person.
That's right.
And then by the end, when you see, what's his name? Hugh Grant playing an Oompa Loompa, I was like, okay, I am dreaming now. I think the mushrooms have kicked in.
It felt like somebody had a switch knife at Timothée Chalamet's back.
Kind of more whimsy. Yeah.
And he's like, sit up or spin down or reverse that. And it felt like I don't know, because according to Paul King, he's like, Timothée Chalamet was the first person he thought of for this role.
Sure.
And I'm like, what in his filmography made you say he should be the guy that Gene Wilder becomes?
Right.
And then separate from that, because I'd totally forgotten that Tim Burton already did the backstory, and I remember watching that being like, why did we need Willy Wonka's backstory? Right.
Right.
So this even more so. Did we need 2 hours of seriously? I mean, you've seen Willy Wonka the Chocolate Factory, I'm assuming.
The original, yeah.
Yeah. When you watch that, are you like, but how did he?
No.
What's his inner conflict? What led him to... No, you're just like, he's the guy in the factory and the whatever, and Veruca Salt and whatever the hell, right?
However, going back to our earlier conversation, if you want to get a movie made, got to have an IP, and instead of remaking Willy Wonka, well, why not go back to the beginning? I mean, that's the trick now. Well, it's not even a new trick. It's a very old trick. But, okay, we're going to make Wonka, but we're going to go back to the beginning. And then there you go. And that's how you get $100 million.
You know, in that CW series I told you about, the 1982 Greatest Geek Year Ever,
Yes, which I watched and really enjoyed.
Yeah, it's off to a good start, I think. So
Yeah.
they're at one point they have an interview with Dean Devlin.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
He talks about it's in that episode. Yeah, he talks about how he had some idea for a new movie and he took it around to various studios and they all turned him down, including 20th Century Fox, who, he's like, you say you like this idea, but you're turning it down. I mean, I made Independence Day for you guys, and I'm assuming they didn't respond by saying, yeah, but you also made Independence Day 2 for us.
Right.
But he said that the response he got from one of the higher ups is, we couldn't get Independence Day made today.
Right.
Unless it was called like War of the Worlds or something.
Yes. Right.
And I was like, isn't that interesting?
Depressing. And while I believe there is a percentage of truth to that, I also feel like, yeah, but how will you ever get an Independence Day again? Like, you could have an Independence Day again if you did it and did it well and trusted people and people loved it.
That's right.
Like it could happen. You're not allowing it to happen.
Yeah.
There's part of that too. And I understand when there's so much money involved, they start playing Moneyball, versus actual,
right.
honest to God baseball. But I don't know.
Anyway, my point is with this trailer, honestly, I was like, this is like Grouch, that trailer.
Yes.
SNL, where it was like the grim and gritty Oscar the Grouch reimagining,
Right.
I refuse to believe this movie is real, and even when it comes out in theaters, I still will not believe it's real.
What if I forced you to watch that? What if that was my ask this year?
Hey, I've asked you to do a few things, so that's fair. It's a fair call.
But the thing is, I don't want to watch it either. So,
okay, so we might hit an impasse then, yeah.
Yeah.
So with that, let's take another short break, and then we'll come back and talk about the big release in theaters this weekend.
Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. It's a thing. And now the truth is out there. I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free anytime, anywhere. And each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
The holidays start here at Baker's with a variety of options to celebrate traditions old and new. Whether you're making a traditional roasted turkey or spicy turkey tacos, your go-to shrimp cocktail, or your first Cajun risotto, Baker's has all the freshest ingredients to embrace your traditions. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
Choose from a great selection of digital coupons and use them up to 5 times in one transaction. Check our app for details. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
And we are back. And Brian, you know who else is back?
Who's that, Zeki?
Why, it's Tom Cruise as Ethan Matthew Hunt.
Yay. Oh, I didn't know that was his middle name.
Yeah, I had to look that up on Wikipedia.
Oh.
I do my research.
That's
the
good,
bare
yeah.
minimum of research. By research, I mean the absolute bare minimum.
Yeah, sure.
So, what's this movie? Oh, yeah. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1.
Part 1.
Is in theaters now, and it's doing okay.
Yeah. I think a week ago, I was like, I knew there was no way it was going to do Maverick numbers, but I did wonder if the high that everyone had from Maverick would carry over to this and help it do pretty darn well. Right. And it seems a little like it's performing on par with Indiana Jones, it seems.
Yes. Now, I think that when all is said and done, this one will probably leg out and do okay.
Agreed.
But yeah, the opening, the 5-day, is in the vicinity of what Dial of Destiny opened to, and this one cost not that far away from what Dial of Destiny cost. So worth recognizing that maybe it's not the movies that are problem; it's how much that are the problem. It's how much money they're spending on these movies.
Yeah, I mean, I think people need to take a step back and just sort of, speaking of just looking at, well, this is how it used to be, but like, yeah, well, that's nice, but how is it now? There's less and less people.
Tom Cruise needs to think about jumping off of mountains for free.
Well, I mean, certainly scaling back the budget, but also like, well, you just you can't expect as many people to show up as they might have in 2019 and earlier.
That's right.
You know, and so I think we're learning that at this moment, and we'll see the result of that. But I mean, you also have to factor into this movie, certainly in Indiana Jones and all that, like COVID. I mean, it didn't make it easy. There were shutdowns, you know, I mean, famously on this one, right? You had Tom Cruise, they had to shut down a couple times.
Lost his shit.
Yeah. And it's funny. I remembered that during the movie and thought, oh wow, like they were filming this like peak COVID. Like I kind of forgot, like, you know, there was that sort of, oh, this must have been kind of weird at times. While, you know, they're learning things about the world as they're trying to make this movie, you know, and
yeah,
it's easy to sort of feel like that was like further away than it really was. But that'll inflate your budget for sure.
Yeah, so I think something like 290 production budget, and then you factor in P&A. So again, you're in the neighborhood of Dial of Destiny.
Yeah.
But whatever, Brian. Look. None of that money came out of our pocket. None of that money's going into our pocket.
Yep. Should have nothing to do with our feelings on it.
That's right. So talk to me about what you thought of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. You got to have that in there. That's right.
That's right. Actually, I will say I love that the movie ended with end of Part 1.
Right?
That was I was like, wow, do you ever see that? Like, that's cool. It makes me feel like there's like a sense of urgency or something, like, oh, okay, okay.
And, beyond that, Brian, it ends with kind of an ending,
which was kind of nice. I mean, like you know, there's still things to solve, but I did appreciate, you know, like with Fast X, it was like a true cliffhanger, right? And I think what I thought was, and that's cool too. You know, it's sort of like Empire Strikes Back or something. Like, are we gonna get Han back or what? Like, totally appreciate that. But I did like that this one had kind of a, all right, cool. We got this thing wrapped up. We can feel good about this. Now we got to go do that. You know, like there was something satisfying about that.
Yeah.
But no, dude, I mean, just like I expected, I had a blast with this movie. I don't know how you can't walk out of this thing completely energized. Like, we'll get into it in spoilers, but like the ending, I was like, whoa, you know, just so thrilling. Lots of great action. There's like, you know, you get the stuff, sort of the fun spycraft of it all. Like there's a sequence in an airport, you know, where they're trailing people, and you've got, you know, the man in the chair or two men in chairs, you know, basically guiding people, but being misled themselves, and like, what's going wrong, you know, kind of thing. And there's just so much fun to be had with that. I thought Haley Atwell was an awesome addition. She was a lot of fun to this. Great energy. Her character was fun. If I had like just one thing I would say about it is that it didn't feel as vibrant or as like the team didn't crackle, the interplay, the fun as much as some of the previous installments. It really felt a little colder, and even for other, you know, some reasons we can get into a little bit more in spoilers. But like when all was said and done, by the end of the thing, I mean, I was all lit up, you know, and I was like, yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed the airport. I enjoyed the car chase in Rome. The ending is spectacular and exciting, and it's like, it's a fantastic time at the movie. So yeah, that was kind of my walk away with it. How about you?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm kind of at this point, especially with the fact that the team of Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise is so baked in, I'm kind of like, I know what my baseline of expectation is from these movies, right? And I would agree that I personally, I kind of put Ghost Protocol and Rogue Nation in pole position of which ones I like the best.
Yeah, same.
But
and Fallout.
I think Fallout is very good. I would say I like those ones slightly better than Fallout, but that's no mark against Fallout, right?
Sure.
And same thing with Dead Reckoning. I'm like, I don't think it's a mark against this film to be like, I think I like those ones slightly better.
Right.
But like, I think at this point, what I appreciated about this film, notwithstanding the stunts and everything, is I thought it was funnier than the recent movies. Like there was more of a sense of humor, poking a little bit more fun at Ethan Hunt, which I think those are the best moments in all of the films when he's just slightly off his game, kind of that Indiana Jones thing.
Though that always is great. Yeah.
Right.
Like they're not too cool for school. Everything works out. Like, yeah, gadgets don't work. There's even like a funny scene where they poke fun at the concept of IMF at the beginning.
Yes.
Which was very funny.
That was funny.
Yeah.
Because I did a rewatch of the entire series in the lead up to this with my kids, and I watched Mission Impossible 2 for the first time since the theaters in 2000. And I loathed that movie when I saw it back then. I hated it.
Right.
And I still think it sucks. I think it's the worst one by a country mile.
Right.
And part of it is because he's just like perfect. He's got his perfect hair and he does his perfect kung fu and he's got the perfect doves whenever he runs in shooting,
Right.
And it drove me crazy. And what they started doing with Ghost Protocol was they added that sense of like, oh man, I'm just trying to figure this out. Again, that Indiana Jones thing.
Mm-hmm.
That the thing when he's climbing the Burj and one of his gloves stops working.
Yes.
Right, and then he's got to figure that out, and then he uses when he's trying to get back to the room, and he's hanging onto like a hose, and Jeremy Renner's like, you don't have enough rope, and he's like, no shit.
Yeah, so funny. Yeah,
that's funny, right? And that's the stuff that I like. And in the fifth one, when he's been like brought back from death,
yeah,
and he's still a little bit woozy, and he's trying to drive and stuff like that's the stuff that works. So there's more of that in this, which I liked.
Yeah.
I
like with the little car, that was really fun. Like
that was very funny.
That one got a huge laugh out of me. Where they find the safe car.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
really funny. I do think it's funny. Like in Rogue Nation, there's this bit where Alec Baldwin is telling like the British PM,
yes,
he's uniquely trained and he's a specialist without equal and immune to countermeasures. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And it's so preposterous. I was like, oh, is that Ethan in the mask? But it's not. I'm like, oh, okay.
Right.
And then in this one, you have Shea Wiggum, who's like the Sam Gerard character, if you will.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. You're right.
Right. And he's like, what did he say? He's a mind-reading, shape-shifting personification of chaos.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Yeah.
I was like, Tom Cruise is signing off on every line.
Right. It's so good.
Right.
Yeah.
But I liked all of that, and I liked the sort of the fact that they have kind of found a comfortable groove.
Yeah.
For who Ethan Hunt should be at this stage. I mean, we're coming up on 30 years since the first movie. And if you watch, from the beginning to now, I mean, you have seen somewhat of a progression, which I think is gratifying.
Definitely.
It's a thumbs up for me.
Oh, definitely a thumbs up for me. Yeah.
Unreserved thumbs up, because I think it's a true theatrical spectacle. I think watch it on IMAX, you're going to appreciate that experience because for all of Tom Cruise screaming at people, which was hilarious, I will admit.
Yeah. And, I wasn't there. I'm not going to defend him necessarily, but you could understand at least what you heard, his frustration at like trying through it's an impossible mission to keep this movie going through the world being shut down and him being frustrated with people not doing their best to support that is how that came across. And you can imagine him just being like, do you understand what, we're pulling our hair out to make this happen.
You can imagine him being like, hey, I just rode a bike off of a cliff 50 times in a row.
Yeah.
You can stand 6 feet apart from that guy.
Exactly. And I mean, again, I wasn't there. Maybe he was a little out of line. I don't know. But like, you could imagine what an absolute like nightmare it was trying to pull this movie off during that moment in history.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that, you wanna talk some spoilers?
Let's do it.
Spoiler.
So I had this thought maybe about halfway through. I was like, because we just had, Fast 10 months ago. And I was like, if Fast 10 is a bag of Doritos.
Yes.
This is a gourmet steak.
Sure.
But they're like almost the same movie.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I had this other thought. I was like, I want the Ethan Hunt, Dom Toretto team up movie, and we'll call it, Brian, Friends and Family.
Yes, because that was a huge part of this film was friends.
Yeah.
And taking care of one another. Your life is more important than my own, which I loved, by the way.
That's great.
I loved Hunt's unreserved sincerity.
Yep.
Right, when he's talking to the Haley Atwell character and he's like, I will die before I let anything happen to you. And she's like, why? And you're like, I don't know, lady, but I believe him. I loved all that stuff.
I mean, this was the most like Fast and Furious. I don't know if Mission Impossible became Fast and Furious or Fast and Furious became Mission Impossible. What I am saying is there's a Venn diagram that's got a pretty big overlap right in the middle.
They kind of did. They kind of each did, right? I mean, we get
up to and including, Brian, Vanessa Kirby and a sentient AI.
Yes. And that might play into also. I was trying to say, like, I just wasn't connecting as well with the in-between pieces between the set pieces, and I think there's a couple of reasons. One is, and I enjoyed all the humor, like you were saying. I did a lot, and I do like the Hunt, how much he cares for everybody and all that, and the stuff between him and Atwell was all fun. I think the quote-unquote villain of this movie is so hard to wrap your head around, or at least it was for me.
You mean the entity.
The entity. And I'm actually going to probably see it again with Federica because she hasn't seen it yet. And I'm kind of looking forward to it because I want to like listen a little closer and try to just wrap my head around what that was all about. Because I'll admit I got like a little lost with that. And then like what it is and why it, I don't know. But then also, I mean, if you don't mind just going into it, I mean, Ilsa dies in this movie. And I think at the beginning, let's go back. At the end of Fallout, we kind of have Hunt saying goodbye to his wife and sort of her giving her blessing for him to continue forward with Ilsa. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, oh, okay. So at the beginning of this movie, when they have their sort of reunion, even though it's under intense circumstances, they don't really act very close, which makes sense in some ways. But I was like, wait, they're together, right? Like I kind of wanted to see at least a little bit of something. And so then when she ends up dying, I wouldn't have minded if the movie had pushed it a little harder. Like we do see this moment where they're on a balcony together and she's like, I've never been to Venice. And he's like, me neither.
And they kind of laugh together. It's a nice.
And that's it. That's basically all we get out of them.
Yeah,
and
I
then
had that same thought.
Yeah. And then when she dies, we cut to him on the balcony by himself. And it reminded me actually of Jimmy Smits in Star Wars when he's seeing that the Empire is basically taking over. and Tom Cruise is basically like, drat. And like taps the balcony that she's dead. I was like, wow, that's it? Like, and then we just move on. And just, I love her so much as a character and as a part of these movies, a part of the flavor. And I was just like, oh, I wouldn't have minded spending a little more emotional time with that.
First of all, I thought that entire sequence leading up to what happens to her really effective.
Mm-hmm.
The tension of I had this thought while watching it. Maybe you can you let me know if I'm wrong. There were two times where I was like, I bet you Brian really like. I think Brian will like that. And one was that it was where it's that close quarters fight in the alleyway with Ethan and Palm Clemente on one side and that other guy, and he's just boxed. It's this super. The alley is just this like tight wall.
Yeah, it felt very John Wicky, to be honest.
Yeah, and it was something different, something we haven't seen in these films.
Yep.
And the other time, at the end, when trying to get through the rail cars, as they're falling off.
Oh my gosh, dude! Right? I was like like squealing with delight.
Right? I was like, that is a Brian sequence. I was like, I know it.
Dude. And that whole thing with him going from train car to train car as it's slowly piece by piece going over the ledge. And then where they're like dangling there, and then there's that piano attached by the cable and the pin is like starting to bend. I was like clapping, like, yes, this is so good.
And it's something different. We've never seen that in these movies, right? And ultimately, that's what you're trying to do. Is if in any of these, I'm just like, give me something I haven't seen. And I think, especially from number 4 onward, they've been very good about that.
I will want to say real quick, because I'm sure someone out there is thinking it. We did see it in Uncharted 2, the video game. I remember. So if anyone out there is like, it's like, wait a minute, yeah, I'm like, no, I remember.
But going back to the thing with Ilsa. The thought I had was, and maybe this is unfair, but I was like, it felt like Tom Cruise trading in one wife for a younger model.
A little bit.
Right? Yeah. I mean, and just because the history is there, Right. Now, that being said, I mean, you put Vanessa Kirby and Haley Atwell and Rebecca Ferguson in the same room. I mean, that's the entity is like, what does Zacchaeus-san want to see? The entity knows me. The entity is a ridiculous conceit that I was distinctly, when the movie started, I was like, okay, so I guess we're doing this now. What I was hoping was that the entity, that little the CGI thing, it would make sounds like the parents in the Peanuts movies.
Yeah, right.
And then Isai Morales would be like, it wants me to tell you, Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that said, I'll tell you a couple. I don't know about you. The scene in the beginning in the airport, and when Benji finds the device.
Yes.
I was like, is Benji about to die?
Me too. I thought that was going to happen. Yeah.
I was like, I'm not ready for that. Don't do that to me, movie.
Yeah. I don't know why, if I had read something or accidentally heard something, but I think I knew that someone was going to die. And I thought, I was like, oh no, here we go.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, this series has actually kept the body count, like on the good guy side, very low. Because from my recollection is before this one, I think the last time it happens is in the first one.
Yeah, where he loses his whole team.
But I can't think of any examples from any of the other ones.
Yeah, not really. Yeah.
So that does make it matter a little bit, and I think it's a good moment. I think, I was like, okay, I know what's going to happen,
Yeah.
But I think the setup, and again, how Ethan is just stuck in that thing, and then you're intercutting. I think all of that played for me. But I agree with you that the status of their relationship was sort of nebulous.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, we did talk about Isai Morales. He was great in this. I really liked him.
Yeah, he was really good.
Probably one of the best villains in this series. And I thought that Sean Harris was pretty good.
Sean Harris is great. Too,
yeah. Right? It's interesting because originally they had cast Nicholas Hoult.
I can totally see that.
I can and I can't.
I could see him being like one of those. He plays those sort of sycophantic sort of people, well, like in The Menu, and just sort of like subservient to someone else.
Fury
and
Road.
Yeah, and sort of like it wants me to, and you sort of believe that guy would do it, kind of thing.
But I wouldn't buy him having any kind of history with Ethan.
That is a good point. That's true. Right.
Like Isai Morales, he's one of those guys, he's been kicking around since forever, but I feel like he's going to get a lot more work off the back of this movie.
Yeah.
Because he's so magnetic.
Right.
Also, Henry Czerny.
Who did he play? Sorry.
He's Kittredge.
Oh, yes, I didn't know. Dude, that guy, that's one of those I could listen to a person read the phone book.
I was about to say, he's got the perfect Hugo Weaving-esque delivery.
100%.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
And he always played, like, because he was the bad guy in Clear and Present Danger, and, he was in the first Mission Impossible. So I was like, oh, yeah, Kittredge, I know him. But I really like the lane they found for his character, where you don't know 100% where he's at.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sort of gratified at the end where he's not a bad guy.
Yes, same.
Right?
Same.
That worked for me.
Yeah, yeah. In all their sort of interplay and that scene at the beginning with the gas and him on the phone, you know.
Yeah.
Like, are you okay? No. You know? You know? Yeah, all that stuff was great.
But yeah, I mean, I think really with a movie like this, you kind of say like stunt, set piece, character, stunt, set piece, you know?
Totally.
And it's like, well, how much do all those pieces fit together? And I think the entire Orient Express sequence, sign me up.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, these movies are designed to thrill you. I stand by it. I think you could have gotten a lot more juice out of the Ilsa thing. Mm-hmm. Even for Hunt's sake, you know what I mean? Like to have, add to his humanity, but we are here to be wowed, and this movie wows.
Yeah. And the other thing, in my opinion, it's 2 hours and 45 minutes. I didn't feel that.
No, we were talking about that when we left. I was like, not once was I thinking about the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, just to pick up on what you were saying about sort of the way they've cemented the characterization of Ethan Hunt. And I'm telling you, man, it's a total Dom Toretto thing, because as soon as he doesn't kill Palm Clementiev, I was like, family.
Yep. Oh, really? You knew right away that? Yeah.
I was like, right there.
That went back to when you were talking about me going, yeah, like I love movies where things get so intense and your hero's fighting a villain and I kind of want them to kill them.
Yeah.
And they don't. And they shoot to the left. In this instance, they bang the pipe over their head. I'm always like, yeah, that's what I want my hero to do. So I loved that particular moment, but then I do love that I didn't see it coming. So I like that she showed up for him
right
at the end. That was good.
And again, with Shea Wiggum, I was like, he's the Hobbs in this.
Right.
I was like, family.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, that's really, to me, like the parallels are so fascinating, because it's like that film school assignment. Here's your premise, go make something, and then you get Fast X, and it's just crazy to me, because think about it, Gabriel and whatever the hell Jason Momoa's character, they come off the same mold.
Yeah, you're so right. Wow, you're right. This lines up way more. Even when you first presented this, I wasn't seeing how many ways this lines up, but it really does.
And the fact that they're both part one.
Yep.
I mean, it's really crazy,
Yeah.
But that I think that's, to me, again, I can say without reservation that watching this, I felt full, like I had a meal.
Yep.
Whereas with that movie, I liked that bag of potato chips. That was a great bag of Doritos I had.
Yep. I 100% agree. Like I mean, I can't see anyone walking out of this not thinking that they got their money well spent.
It is interesting because I think the consistency of, again, specifically these latter films, is the draw. It's like, what you're going to get. There's this certain level of craft,
mm-hmm.
and there is a sort of a tactile, practical nature to it. I mean, obviously, we know that the mountain that Ethan is biking up, well, that's actually a ramp in the CGI. But that's actually Tom Cruise, this insane lunatic of a person who's riding his bike off that thing.
Yeah.
Right. And there's that great shot. I mean, it starts at like a medium shot that pulls out. So you're like, no, that's definitely him.
Yep.
Zeno better catch his ass. And I think that's something unique in the industry. Like that's what these movies are giving. They're giving something unique that's just not on offer anywhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, I could watch these forever. Like I just hope they don't stop. I'm sure they're going to need some vacations after doing these things back to back. But like, yeah. Like you said, they're offering something that no one else is offering right now. And I mean, based on the full theater that I was in last night, I mean, people are hungry for that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, box office, I don't know what to say about that. But I mean, based on the experiences I've had in the past couple months where theaters have not been full, quote unquote opening night, it came out really, I guess, Wednesday, but like Friday night, start of the weekend, a lot of people showed up because they wanted to see this. So, yeah. I
mean, that's like I said, going back to what I was saying earlier, I think the movie will leg out. I think it'll be fine. But that sense of like, no, this is a theater experience, and I'm curious how many people feel that because you and I were talking about this. I mean, it feels like streaming has broken a lot of brains. Or people are like, oh, whatever, I'll just wait. And I don't know. And maybe this is just because people like us, we don't die on toilets. That's a Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
Which one was that? Lethal Weapon
2.
That's the second one.
Yeah.
Commentary track coming soon, hopefully.
Oh yeah.
But people like us have just grown up. This has been our life. We go to the theater. That's what it is. And I think that habit was broken by the pandemic, and I don't know that is going to get readopted by as many people as it was at one time.
Yeah, it probably won't go back. But yes, I still look to the theater to be thrilled and to be surprised and to, for that level of entertainment. That's me. Like that, I'm conditioned for that. So yeah, I still will.
So here's my question. Part 2 comes next June, I think.
Okay, good. I'm glad it's not a couple of years.
Yeah. And it's being touted as a finale of sorts. So here's the question. Do you think they're going to kill off Ethan Hunt?
I don't want them to.
Yeah.
That's my feeling. I mean, these just aren't. Going back to Indiana Jones. So the 1, 2, and 3, they're very James Bond-like, right? Where it's like the next adventure, he wears the same clothes, and then he's got, another girl. And, like they're like installments, or you know what I mean? They're separate adventures, and they're super fun. And then
they're episodic.
That's sorry. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. And 5 let a little bit more groundedness seep in, and for some people that didn't play. Right? Or it's just not exactly what they wanted. They wanted to still feel a little heightened and,
Yeah.
And I think with these movies, they're not, they have these little pops of humanity and whatnot, but like they really are like, let's just have fun and have these guys in crazy situations, see how they get out of them. And they don't go for a lot of that super, super grounded sort of emotional stuff. Mm-hmm. And so with that in mind, I don't think I would be prepared to see our hero then. I'd rather see him go into the sunset than into the ground. So
I mean, he has said he'd like to keep doing these movies for, as long as he can.
Mm-hmm.
So my thought is, well, that may well be true, or maybe he's trying to throw people off the scent. Because
that's true.
Like, could be either way.
Yeah.
I guess we'll find out. We'll find out a year from now.
We'll find out.
Little under a year from now. But anything else that you wanted to say about Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1?
Well, I already mentioned it, but I will say real quick. I really did love that Abu Dhabi airport sequence because we have our bombastic stunts. We have our car chase through Rome, which is really exciting. Seeing motorcycles and cars get smashed. But I love this sort of, all right, take your left, your other left. Like I love those kind of things. Or like we think it's him, and then they turn him around and it's not the guy they thought they were following, but he's been pickpocketed and he's got to go that way, and there's the bad guy over there, gotta hide, like all that kind of stuff. And like, and then also there's like potentially a dangerous suitcase that's going through all the conveyor belts, with the luggage handling, like go get it, I'll be on the computer, like that stuff is still really tense and exciting and fun for me, and I enjoy that sequence a lot too. We have to mention, we got all the Tom Cruise runs, Tom Cruise running at least 3, I think. And for me, the top one was him on top of the airport. I was like, that is so cool.
And the fact that we get that great, like that in the inside shot where Shea Wiggum is in the foreground. He's like,
yes,
where is he? And you just see him zip in the back.
Yes, behind him. Yeah,
that's very funny. Going back to the airport sequence, one thing I'll mention, the thought I had while watching is, I grew up watching the television show, the Mission Impossible television show.
Yeah.
And I still enjoy it. And I was like, man, look at where we are now.
Right.
In terms of all the technological elements involved in spycraft compared to sort of the spirit gum and glue version that they had to do in the original show.
Yep.
It's amazing to me. This franchise has been around for 50 plus years now,
Wow.
It's kind of remarkable, and I'll just put it out there to people who've never seen the show. Check it out. It's on, they've got like a bundle on Vudu. It's pretty cheap. And if you have Paramount Plus or whatever, it's just a really good show. It still holds up.
I'd like to check it out. Yeah. I used to watch it with my dad, but I don't have a lot of memories of it.
Oh, okay. There you go.
One more thing along those lines. I wanted to mention the masks of it all.
Yes.
Vanessa Kirby gets to have a lot of fun at the end playing Haley Atwell, playing her. You know what I mean? Like, that's always like a thing I think I enjoy in movies where someone is pretending to be someone else. So it's like you're seeing an actor pretend like there's someone else in disguise as them. And so that whole sequence I thought was really fun, and she was really good in that.
I also, in that vein, I liked the sort of the arc that they gave Grace, who I don't think, did we even establish if that's her real name? It's kind of like,
it seemed like that was a fake name she was giving,
yeah.
But yeah.
But I like where she ends up. I think just in terms of the character motivation and just echoing what you said earlier, sort of like modeling goodness. Like Ethan is just like, I want to do the right thing, and that is enough of a thing to bring people around to him.
Right.
Because three characters: Grace, Paris, and the Wiggum character. Kind of the same thing,
Yep. It's his doing the right thing against all odds that compels them.
Yeah,
they're like, well, there's something to this guy. He doesn't behave like you think he might.
So what if he's the personification of chaos?
yeah.
Uniquely trained and highly motivated. He's always satisfied every woman he's ever met.
Right.
Tom Cruise made sure to pencil that in.
Right.
But I'm good. I'm happy with the movie, Brian.
Me too. I mean, aside from 2, truly, like, I don't know that there is one that I don't like. There are ones that I might, place in front of others, but like they're all, if you're going to watch any of them, you're going to have a good time. And this one falls right into that.
There we go. I couldn't agree more there. And of course, if y'all listening have some thoughts on Dead Reckoning Part 1, whether you agree with what we said or maybe you disagree, either way is fine, but you can let us know at moviefilmpodcast@gmail.com. You can also hit like on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/moviefilmpodcast, and message us there. As for me, if you're looking for me on social media, I am on Threads. I'm not using it very much, but seems like that's where the zeitgeist is shifting, leaving poor Mr. Musk, who is 2 steps away from being a villain in a Mission Impossible.
Right.
But you can find me there. Wherever social media exists, mostly I'm at Zacky's Corner. You can find me there. What about you, Brian?
Well, episodes I've written of Young Jedi Adventures are out there and available on Disney Junior and Disney Plus. And new episodes are going to be dropping soon on August 2nd. So people can look forward to that.
Coming up, just a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And action figures are on the shelves.
Yes. I mean, so I've heard, I should say, because I went to the Target near my house, and I didn't see them. So I'm eagerly awaiting seeing them in the wild.
Yeah, I was at Target with my younger 2 earlier this week, and my daughter was like, "It's Nubs, it's Nubs."
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah, I went on a whole journey. Speaking of, of just trying to watch the movie, watch Mission Impossible, because I managed to miss every single press screening. And so this past weekend, my wife and my older 3 kids, they went camping.
Okay.
And I was home watching my younger 2. And then on Monday evening, my younger 2, like my brother-in-law took them to spend the night at his house because his daughters are home, whatever. So suddenly I'm alone, and I'm like, "Hey, there's a screening." They had like a early screening Monday night. I was like, hey, I'll go see it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, nah, I don't feel like going.
Yeah.
You know,
because of the time.
Moment. What's that?
Because of how long it was.
That was part of it, and the other part was like I couldn't remember the last time I had nothing to do.
Right.
I just didn't want anything to do.
I totally understand that.
Right. I was like, I think I would rather just be on my bed right now doing nothing.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful.
It was everything I hoped it would be.
I'm like Steve Rogers at the end of Endgame. It was amazing. Although he had seen Haley Atwell, I had not seen Haley Atwell. So same reaction though. And then it was just like one thing. Like Tuesday, I was going to go in the afternoon, but then I was like, well, I'm going to watch it the next day with my boys, and I don't know if I want to spend the 3 hours each day watching the same movie.
Sure.
And then like Wednesday something came up, and then Tuesday we were going to go, and like my fridge stopped working, and I was like, I'm just trying to get to the theater.
Yeah.
But by gum, I made it happen. So
Yeah.
But with that, we're going to bring down the curtain on episode 273 of the Movie Film Show. As always, if you like what we are doing, if you like what you're doing, keep doing it. If you like what we're doing, please go to Apple Podcasts, leave a review, leave a star rating. Every little bit helps. And on behalf of my partner, Brian Hall, my name is Zaki Hassan. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will catch you next time.
Welcome, friends. It's the Movie Film Podcast. Movie Film Podcast. Enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian are talking about the movies. Movie Film Podcast on the radio.
The holidays start here at Baker's with a variety of options to celebrate traditions old and new. Whether you're making a traditional roasted turkey or spicy turkey tacos, your go-to shrimp cocktail, or your first Cajun risotto, Baker's has all the freshest ingredients to embrace your traditions. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
We've locked in low prices to help you save big store-wide. Look for the locked in low prices tags and enjoy extra savings throughout the store. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
When you download the Baker's app, you have easy access to savings every day. Get the most out of weekly sales and receive personalized coupons to save on your favorite items, all while earning 1 fuel point for every dollar spent. Baker's makes it easy to save while you shop, whether it's in-store or online, so you get the most value out of every trip, every time. Download the Baker's app now to save big on your next purchase. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Must have a digital account to redeem offers. Restrictions may apply. See site for details.